What happens when a leader, renowned for his faith and courage, stumbles in the face of temptation? King David, one of Israel's most revered figures, found himself entangled in a story of sin, deception, and redemption, one that would reshape his legacy forever. David's journey with Bathsheba is more than just a tale of moral failure. It's a profound look into the struggles we all face between desire and duty. In his moments of weakness, David's choices set off a chain of events that tested not only his integrity, but the strength of his relationship with God. This story is more than just a history lesson. It challenges us to consider our own moments of temptation and the lengths we might go to protect ourselves from the truth. What unfolds in David's life reveals that even the most powerful are vulnerable to sin, yet it also offers hope that even after our gravest mistakes, there is room for redemption. And from David's failures and repentance comes a remarkable legacy in his offspring, particularly in Solomon, whose birth represents God's promise of forgiveness and a new beginning. Dive into this story with me and see how the sins of a king resonate with our lives today. We'll explore each step of David's journey, from his hidden desires to the birth of Solomon, uncovering powerful lessons about consequence, accountability, and the ever-present possibility of renewal. When kings were expected to lead their armies into battle, David stayed behind in Jerusalem, a choice that subtly changed his path. This decision wasn't just a physical choice, it hinted at a deeper shift within him, a momentary lapse in duty that opened the door to all that would follow. Picture it: the king, once celebrated for his valor and faith, choosing comfort over his responsibility. This single choice to remain idle instead of marching into war shows us how even minor decisions, often made in a heartbeat, can unfold into profound consequences. Think about it. How many times do we make simple choices thinking they'll have no real impact? But here's the twist. David's choice sets the stage for a sequence of life-altering events. Sometimes, it's not the big battles we face that define us, but rather the quiet-eye, unseen decisions made away from the spotlight. For anyone, choosing comfort over purpose can lead to unexpected consequences, whether in relationships, careers, or even spiritual life. It's a small, seemingly harmless act that often marks the beginning of troubles we never anticipated. Imagine a modern leader, someone in a position to inspire and protect, deciding to take a back seat instead. In our lives, it might look like opting out of that crucial meeting, skipping a family obligation, or neglecting a promise. These moments seem insignificant, but can spiral into larger issues. David's initial hesitation teaches us that integrity requires vigilance even when no one else is watching. The world sees kings and heroes, but character, that's often built, and sometimes broken, when no one's looking. Of course, staying in Jerusalem was only the beginning for David. This idle decision allowed him to see things he wasn't meant to see, a view from his palace that would lead him down a path he never intended. This choice, almost casual in its simplicity, sowed seeds of consequence that would shape his entire reign. It's as if life subtly nudged him into a new chapter, one where lessons were learned the hard way. So, while David's choice might seem trivial, it's a powerful reminder of how small actions can echo across time. We all have a Jerusalem moment, a time when we could have acted differently. It's a call to stay vigilant, to choose responsibility even when comfort calls, because who knows where that one choice might lead. On a quiet evening, David strolled across his palace rooftop, a place of reflection and solitude. But that night, his gaze fell upon Bathsheba, and in an instant something in him shifted. Desire stirred within him, something primal, overpowering, and profoundly human. It's that magnetic pull we all feel sometimes, the kind that tugs at our better judgment and dares us to entertain thoughts we know aren't right. David, a king with wisdom and spiritual depth, was not immune to this powerful emotion. This was no mere passing glance. It was a spark that would soon ignite actions with irreversible impact. Desire, when unchecked, can be as consuming as fire, and David's feelings for Bathsheba quickly spiraled beyond reason. Imagine standing on that rooftop, knowing the weight of your responsibilities, yet feeling drawn toward something you know could unravel everything. For many, it's these fleeting moments of temptation that define true character. When a person stands at the edge of choice, wrestling between impulse and integrity, The outcome often hinges on how deeply they hold onto their values. David ours in that moment, allowed his desire to override his duties, crossing a line he would later struggle to erase. Consider how relatable this is. Each of us has faced a situation where temptation seemed to outweigh our logic or values. Whether it's the allure of success, the thrill of risk, or the excitement of a forbidden relationship, these desires can cloud judgment. Like David, people often make choices that seem small at first, harmless even, but can lead to a cascade of unexpected consequences. In David's case, what started as a glance soon grew into actions he couldn't take back, a lesson in the power of restraint. Yet desire alone wasn't the issue. It was the lack of pause. David could have stepped back, acknowledged the pull, but chosen to refocus. In today's world, this might look like distancing oneself from a tempting but dangerous opportunity, or taking a moment to reflect on the broader impact of our actions. Self-control is a practice, a muscle that must be used if it's to withstand life's inevitable tests. David's story reminds us that failing to pause and evaluate can quickly turn innocent moments into defining, and sometimes damaging, decisions. So, as David's rooftop decision set events in motion, we're reminded of the importance of self-awareness. It's not about erasing desire. It's about learning to recognize it and choose wisely. The rooftop is symbolic, a reminder that life often places us on the edge of choice, where the stakes may be invisible, yet profound. And as we'll see, what follows isn't just about desire, but the lengths one might go to satisfy it. In a moment of weakness, David sent for Bathsheba, despite knowing she was the wife of Uriah, a soldier loyal to him and to Israel. This decision marked a turning point, where David, a king known for his strength and moral guidance, gave in to impulse. It's a stark reminder of how even the strongest among us can falter when desire outweighs duty. In David's world, kings had unparalleled power, but with that power came the expectation of unwavering responsibility, a responsibility David set aside in his pursuit. It's easy to think power shields us, but as David would soon find out, it can just as easily entangle us. This moment of indulgence brought immediate consequences, as Bathsheba later informed David of her pregnancy. In that instant, the weight of his actions became painfully clear. Yet, instead of facing his mistake, David attempted to hide it. How often do we, too, find ourselves entangled in webs of our own making? The temptation to avoid accountability, to cover up a mistake, is an age-old impulse, as universal today as it was in David's time. But this path rarely leads to peace. David's choice shows us that hiding from our actions often brings deeper turmoil, forcing us down roads we never planned to travel. David's attempts to cover up the situation are all too familiar. Think about how people sometimes hide from the truth in their personal lives, perhaps by burying mistakes under layers of secrecy or rationalizing poor decisions. It might start small, but avoidance usually leads to even more damaging choices. For David, the next steps would spiral further, and he'd find himself trapped in his own web of deceit. His story echoes a powerful lesson. Hiding from consequences only prolongs the inevitable, as the truth has a way of surfacing. Imagine if David had chosen a different path, if he had confronted his actions directly. In today's world, this might look like confessing a misstep at work or coming clean to a loved one. However difficult that might be, honesty, though painful in the moment, has the power to heal and rebuild. It's the way forward, the only way to ensure a mistake doesn't grow into a mountain of regret. David's decision to avoid accountability pushed him into darker territories, and his attempt to control the narrative would only deepen the impact of his choices. As David's actions unfold, they serve as a warning of the complexity and cost of deception. One decision led to another, each compounding the last, until the weight of his choices became impossible to bear. What started as a desire now required layers of concealment, revealing that sin, once hidden, demands greater cover. And as we'll see, even the lengths David went to conceal his actions weren't enough to avoid the consequences that would follow. Upon hearing of Bathsheba's pregnancy, David felt the gravity of his actions tightening around him. The king devised a plan, thinking he could hide the affair by bringing Uriah back from battle. If Uriah spent time with his wife, perhaps he would assume the child as his own. It's a tactic rooted in desperation, a moment where David's power became a tool for deception rather than for justice. This attempt at concealment underscores how, sometimes, the scramble to cover our tracks leads us down an even more difficult path. When Uriah returned, however, his loyalty became an unexpected obstacle. While David hoped Uriah would go home to Bathsheba, Uriah chose instead to sleep at the palace gates, in solidarity with his fellow soldiers still in the field. His actions spoke volumes about his character, a character so steadfast that it inadvertently highlighted David's failings. It's a powerful reminder that integrity, even when unintentional, has a way of exposing dishonesty. Uriah's loyalty inadvertently turned David's plan on its head, leaving him scrambling once again to resolve his dilemma. Think about situations where our best-laid plans backfire because we underestimated the integrity or loyalty of others. David expected Uriah to act in a certain way, yet Uriah's honor was beyond manipulation. This scenario shows us that when we try to involve others in covering our mistakes, we risk losing control of the situation entirely. Imagine a friend or colleague whose commitment to truth disrupts your attempt to gloss over an error. Uriah's loyalty serves as a mirror, reflecting back the depth of David's missteps. With his initial plan thwarted, David faced a choice: abandon his attempts to conceal or double down with even more drastic measures. Instead of choosing the former, he sank further, trying yet again to bend circumstances to his will. This is where the lesson deepens. Cover-ups often require more cover-ups, pulling us further away from resolution. The harder David tried to avoid the truth, the more trapped he became in his own web. It's a cycle many can relate to, a series of small, misguided choices piling up until they become insurmountable. So, here was David, king of Israel, unable to control the very situation he had created. Uriah's loyalty stood as an immovable barrier, a reminder that some values cannot be twisted or controlled, and as David's desperation grew, his choices would take him down an even darker path, showing that once integrity is sacrificed, the cost of deception only escalates. What follows is a tragic step, one that David may have never anticipated when he first stood on that rooftop. In a final, desperate move, David resolved to ensure Uriah's death, a decision that marked a chilling shift in his character. Unable to manipulate Uriah's loyalty, David arranged for him to be sent to the front lines, knowing the brutal cost. This choice, born of fear and self-preservation, took David from misstep to outright sin. It was no longer just a matter of poor judgment or moral weakness. It had evolved into a calculated, irreversible act, one that would forever cast a shadow over his reign. The king who once united Israel with strength and justice was now orchestrating deceit in a way that redefined his legacy. Picture the battlefield, chaotic and ruthless, where soldiers fought side by side, each trusting the next with their lives. For Uriah, that trust was betrayed, yet he remained unaware. David's plan took advantage of Uriah's commitment to the very cause David was undermining. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the worst betrayals come not from enemies, but from those closest to us. This betrayal resonates deeply, showing the consequences of prioritizing self-interest over loyalty and how a single act can ripple out, affecting lives in ways we can never fully predict. David's actions are a sobering look at how far people might go to escape accountability. In his fear, David didn't just sacrifice a loyal soldier, he sacrificed a piece of his own integrity. It's a story as relevant today as it was then. Think about moments where people, in business or personal life, cross ethical lines to save face. Once we compromise once, each successive compromise becomes easier. David's choice reflects how the gradual erosion of one's values often leads to an outcome that was unthinkable at the outset, showing the powerful, often devastating, pull of self-preservation. It's also a lesson on the cost of unchecked power. As king, David had the authority to make decisions that others could not question, a privilege that led him to a terrible misuse of his influence. Imagine a leader in today's world using their power to manipulate outcomes for personal gain, thinking their position would protect them from repercussions. The story warns us of the dangers of power wielded without accountability. Uriah's death wasn't just a tragic loss, it was a moment where justice was distorted by the very person meant to uphold it. This dark chapter in David's life shows how one choice can change everything, pulling him deeper into the consequences of his initial decisions. From that rooftop, What seemed like a fleeting moment of desire had now spiraled into an act of betrayal and death. And as David would soon learn, the cost of sin does not end with a single life. It ripples into consequences that he could not escape, a harsh truth that would soon confront him in ways he never imagined. David's actions did not go unnoticed, and soon he found himself face to face with the prophet Nathan, a man unafraid to speak truth to power. Sent by God, Nathan approached David not with accusations but with a story, a parable that would open David's eyes to his own wrongdoing. Nathan's story of a rich man stealing a poor man's cherished lamb was crafted to bypass David's defenses, allowing him to see the depth of his own sin without immediate resistance. This method of confrontation speaks volumes about wisdom and the power of storytelling to reach even the most hardened hearts. As Nathan recounted the tale, David's sense of justice flared up. Enraged by the rich man's actions, he declared that such a person deserved severe punishment. It was then that Nathan turned the parable on him, revealing, "You are that man." In that moment, David's world came crashing down as he realized the full weight of his actions. This confrontation was not just about exposing David's sin. It was a moment of awakening, a revelation of how far he had strayed from the man he once was. Nathan's approach teaches us that sometimes, to see ourselves clearly, we need a mirror, one held up by those courageous enough to show us our flaws. Imagine having a friend or mentor who knows how to reach you in your blind spots, someone who can confront you with truth in a way that inspires reflection rather than defensiveness. Nathan's role in David's story is a testament to the importance of honest, caring relationships. In life, we often avoid difficult truths, preferring comfort over growth. But, as David discovered, growth rarely comes without discomfort. True friends, like Nathan, are those who care enough to speak the truth, even when it hurts, because they know that growth requires it. Upon hearing Nathan's words, David's heart broke with genuine repentance. He recognized the enormity of his sin, not only against Bathsheba and Uriah, but against God and the kingdom he was meant to protect. This realization led him to a place of deep sorrow, a turning point that reshaped his life and leadership. It's a reminder that admitting wrongdoing, though painful, is the first step toward redemption. David's story shows us that repentance isn't just about regret. It's a call to change, to restore what was broken, and to realign with one's values. Nathan's confrontation marks a pivotal moment, one that reminds us of the power of accountability. David's path to repentance would be long and filled with consequences, but his willingness to face his actions head-on speaks to the resilience of the human spirit. And as we look to the next part of his journey, we see how David's life begins to reflect the age-old truth. While we cannot undo our actions, we can choose how we respond to them, shaping the legacy we leave behind. David's repentance was deep and sincere, a moment where he truly grasped the magnitude of his actions. He was no longer the powerful king, untouched by consequence, but a man broken by the weight of his own choices. Yet, despite his genuine remorse, God's justice remained. The loss of his first child with Bathsheba was a painful reminder that, while forgiveness is possible, consequences often linger. This is a hard truth in life, one that shows how certain actions set forces in motion that cannot simply be undone by sorrow alone. Even in repentance, David learned that there is a cost to sin. This judgment wasn't about punishment for punishment's sake. It was about the balance between mercy and justice. David had wronged not only individuals but had used his power in ways that affected the entire kingdom. God's response served as a lesson in accountability, a divine reminder that even those closest to him must face the repercussions of their actions. Think of it like a parent disciplining a child not to punish, but to teach. In our own lives, we often find that real growth requires not only forgiveness but the willingness to face the impact of our actions. In a modern context, it's similar to the process of repairing broken trust. When we make mistakes, especially in relationships, sincere apologies are vital, but they don't erase the hurt caused. Healing is often accompanied by consequences, by the hard work of regaining trust. For David, the loss of his child was the visible outcome of his choices, a grief that ran deeper than words. His pain was real, a lasting reminder of the importance of integrity and the gravity of choices, even in moments of weakness. His journey teaches that remorse must be coupled with a commitment to change. Through his sorrow, David also found a path back to God. He poured out his heart, not seeking to bargain with God, but simply to reconnect. It's here that we see the beauty of repentance, not as a way to escape consequence, but as a way to rebuild relationship. David's story encourages us to seek forgiveness not as a quick fix, but as a heartfelt return to what truly matters. In today's world, it might look like making amends with those we've wronged, committing to actions that reflect genuine change, or even seeking reconciliation through quiet, consistent efforts over time. As David mourned, he learned to embrace both God's mercy and justice, understanding that life's trials often forge us in ways we can't foresee. His loss left a scar, but also a lesson that would shape his future. David's journey wasn't about erasing the past, but learning to live with it, carrying forward the wisdom gained. And while he would go on, the impact of his choices lingered, a testament to the fact that while we may be forgiven, we are forever shaped by the paths we take. After enduring the painful loss of their first child, David and Bathsheba were blessed with another son, Solomon. This birth marked a moment of hope and renewal, a sign that redemption was possible even after the darkest times. Solomon's arrival wasn't just a personal joy for David. It was a sign that God's love and purpose could still unfold through him. This new beginning was a reminder of the resilience of life and faith, showing that while we may stumble, our stories aren't solely defined by our mistakes. Solomon's birth was proof that out of sorrow can come profound blessings. From the start, Solomon was a child marked by divine favor. God sent the prophet Nathan to name him Jedediah, meaning beloved of the Lord, a unique mark of God's affection. This child, though born from a relationship with a complex past, was deeply cherished by God, illustrating that the divine can transform any story. Sometimes in life, second chances appear in unexpected forms, reminding us that every new beginning carries potential. For David and Bathsheba, Solomon's life represented a fresh chapter, one filled with purpose and the promise of future blessings. Imagine the weight of such a legacy, knowing you were born to fulfill a destiny bigger than yourself. Solomon would go on to become one of Israel's greatest kings, known for wisdom and wealth, but also as a symbol of David's redemption. In our own lives, these Solomon moments come when we are granted opportunities to grow beyond our past mistakes, to rebuild and contribute something meaningful. Whether through family, work, or personal endeavors, these moments teach us that while past actions shape us, they don't have to define our future. Solomon's life, like David's, was not without challenges, but his story reminds us of the beauty of resilience. Just as David faced trials, so too would Solomon encounter choices that tested his wisdom and integrity. Yet, his very existence stood as a testament to God's mercy and grace. In modern terms, it's like being given a new role or opportunity after a failure, a chance to prove not only to others but to ourselves that we are more than our past. Solomon's path shows that true legacy is built not just on talent, but on how we rise from life's trials. As we look at Solomon's birth, it's clear that redemption doesn't erase the past but weaves it into a greater purpose. David's journey with Bathsheba was painful, yet out of it came a future king, a bridge to Israel's golden age, and a symbol of God's unwavering love. This chapter in David's life illustrates that redemption often arrives quietly, through everyday blessings and new beginnings. And as Solomon grew, he carried forward the lessons of his father's life, preparing to leave his own mark on Israel's story. Reflecting on David's journey, one question lingers: how do we face our own moments of weakness and choose a path that leads to growth? His story, filled with temptation, loss, and redemption, challenges us to confront our actions honestly and embrace accountability. Like David Maas, we may find ourselves at crossroads where desire battles with duty, but the way forward lies in seeking integrity, even when it demands sacrifice. David's life shows that true repentance isn't about erasing the past, it's about transforming it into a source of wisdom. How can you, too, find strength in your story, even in its difficult chapters? What steps could you take today to start your own journey of renewal? As Solomon's birth symbolized a fresh beginning for David, it's a reminder that we, too, can find hope and purpose after the darkest moments. If this resonates with you, consider subscribing to the channel for more stories that inspire reflection and growth. Let's continue exploring together, finding meaning in ancient stories and applying them to our modern lives. And don't forget to activate notifications. You won't want to miss the next lesson.